Thank you for joining me on another episode of She Leads Now, a podcast for women entrepreneurs and professionals who want to expand your innate leadership ability and influence, cultivate a culture of belonging and collaboration, develop others to perform at their greatest potential, and of course, live a life that is fulfilling, abundant, and impactful. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon. After nearly 14 years of climbing the corporate ladder as an HR professional and a leader, I became a corporate dropout and have spent the past several years helping organizations and leaders align their business goals with their talent strategies, strengthen their leadership bench, and create environments that employees actually want to be a part of. Tune in every Wednesday for insight, practical tools and strategies, as well as inspiring stories from other women leaders who have climbed the ropes and are now making a huge impact within their spheres of influence. Looking forward to chatting with you soon. Welcome to another episode of She Leads Now. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon. And today I have another fabulous female entrepreneur and guest with me, Anna Dearmon Kornick. Anna is a time management coach, wife, and mom who helps busy professionals and business owners master time management so they can stop feeling overwhelmed and start spending time on what matters most. Isn't that what we all want? As the host of It's About Time, a podcast about work, life, and balance, Anna shares time management tips, productivity strategies, and real-life advice to help her listeners make the most of their time. In addition to teaching actionable takeaways, Anna interviews other go-getters to find out how they navigate family, friends, fulfilling careers, and full schedules. With that, welcome to the show, Anna. I am so excited and thrilled to have you here.
Hi, Sabine. Thank you so much for having me. The pleasure is all mine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So at the time of the recording, it's summer. And so not only do we have all the stuff that we regularly have going on, now we're trying to fit in fun. We're trying to fit in family and vacations, and kids are probably home from school. So it's a crazy time. So I think it's perfect timing that we're having this. But before we get into time management and productivity strategies, Anna, I would love for you to walk us through briefly your background, your journey to getting to this place of being this amazing time management coach.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to join you on the show today. I'm so excited about the conversation we're about to have. And time management is something that's timely, really, any time of year. But right now, with it being the summer, there are so many things going on. The fall is only going to get busier. So it's really a great time to think about how you're spending your time, how you want to spend your time going into the fall of the year, and to start to lay the groundwork now. So I was known for years as the late friend among my group, the one that they would say, oh, we're heading to brunch at 9:30. So hopefully I would arrive by 10. And full disclosure, I was late for work so many times in one role that I had, 17 times in 6 months that I was written up by a supervisor. All things that I am certainly not proud of, but I just want to set the stage to let you know that if you're listening in and you're thinking time management is impossible for me, if I can do it, you can do it. So I actually found my way into time management coaching in a way in my first job right out of college. So my very first job right out of college, I was a scheduler to a United States congressman. So I spent my days click-clacking around in high heels and pencil skirts, managing one of the most hectic schedules in the country for a congressman who somehow had to be everywhere at once. So I spent what felt like 10 to 12-hour days parked in front of an Outlook calendar, fielding hundreds of meeting requests and speaking invitations, dinner invites, reception invites, not to mention committee meetings and vote schedules and constituent meetings. And it was a lot to manage, not only my own time management as a young professional, but also managing a very important schedule. And as much as I loved working and living in DC, I'm from Louisiana. I'm a Louisiana girl. And if you know anything about Louisiana, you might know that we're known for our food. And after spending some time in DC, I really missed the fact that I could not get boiled crawfish or shrimp creole or jambalaya or gumbo or etouffee or my grandmother's mayhaw jelly whenever I wanted.
And beignets.
Oh, and beignets, like all the good stuff. I mean, there was a Popeyes like right around the corner from my apartment in DC. And I was on a first name basis with them because I needed that Popeyes Louisiana fried chicken. So I moved back to Louisiana where I kicked off a 10-year career in the 24/7 world of crisis communication and government affairs. Every single day, I spent time helping my clients during their darkest times. Their reputations were on the line, their businesses were hanging in the balance. You name it. Let's see. I've worked through hurricanes, oil spills, tornadoes, floods, droughts, plant explosions, nonprofit embezzlement schemes, universities on the brink of financial collapse, you name it. And I've actually probably escorted someone down one of those back freight elevators and into a back alley in order to avoid TV cameras waiting outside. Literally, that was a part of my life, was always being in crisis mode. And as much as I loved the high energy nature of this type of work, as you can imagine, it really began to take a toll on me after a while, being available 24/7, constantly being in crisis mode. And soon I found myself in a state of burnout.
Yeah.
My health was crumbling. My relationships were not in a good place. My boundaries were basically non-existent because I was always on. I was stepping out of dinners to take calls. I missed baby showers. I missed really important family events. And after one too many mornings of crying in the stairwell on the way up to my windowless office for another day of chaos, I knew that something had to give, that something had to change, that I had become the crisis that needed to be managed, and that I had to find a better way. I knew it was out there. I knew that there was a way that I could somehow combine these communication skills that I loved with that weird time management experience that I got early on in my career. And so I walked away from that 10-year career, what many would say is prestigious or a sexy, cool career, whatever, managing crises. But I walked away and started a period of trial and error. I wasn't sure what was next, but I knew that something was out there. And so I read every book that I could get my hands on, listened to every podcast, dove into every research paper about how to manage time and find balance and be productive and to live the life of your dreams, because I saw other people doing it. And so after my time of trial and error, something began to change. Something began to shift, and other people started to notice it. I became more calm. I was more carefree because I was living with a plan. I wasn't just managing a calendar. I was living with purpose, and others wanted to know how to do it too. And so that's when it became my mission to help others, especially women, because we shoulder so much of that invisible load, that emotional labor. That's when it became my mission to help others either avoid that dark place of burnout that I had found myself in, or dig their way out of it if they were there now. And so now I'm a time management coach. At the time, I didn't know if that was a thing, but I decided I'm going to be a time management coach, and I am going to help others stop feeling overwhelmed and start spending time on what matters most. And so I love the work that I do. I love working with clients one-on-one. I love serving in my membership program, the It's About Time Academy. And I especially love connecting with listeners of the It's About Time podcast.
Oh, I love it. And there are parts of that journey that I wasn't even familiar with. So thank you so much for sharing that. There's so much I want to unpack there, but a couple of things that really stuck out for me is really boundaries, setting boundaries, and even identifying that you didn't have any, starting that process. And I know I listened to one of your podcasts, you talked about all of this. Really, the foundation is you getting clarity on what are your mission, what are your values, what's important to you, what is your vision. And so when you can have that clarity of what that looks like for you, then it's easier, I should say, to start setting those boundaries and then learning how to communicate them and truly living that life. So if you could talk a little bit more, because you mentioned it, as women, we do shoulder the burden, right? It's like everyone and everything comes first. And then if we have some time, okay, well, Where do I need to improve? So how do you go about first getting that clarity of who am I? What's important to me? Like, what do I want to focus on?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. That is such a great question and such an important place to start. One of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to time management is that you start by opening up your planner or opening up your Google Calendar and figuring out, okay, how can I fit everything in? How can I move things around so that I can do everything? And then, like you said, everything for other people. And then with 3 minutes from 11 o'clock to 11:03 p.m., that can be time for me. And I'll scroll Instagram until I absolutely pass out. The subject of boundaries can be so confusing because we all know that we need to have boundaries. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody said, oh, I just need to set better boundaries. But what does that actually mean? What does it actually mean to set a boundary? Because just saying I need to set better boundaries, that's a very abstract concept because you can't touch an invisible boundary. You can't feel this. It's something that you have to put a number on or a way. You have to find a way to make boundaries real, or else there's nothing to stick to. And so we can dive into that in just a bit. But when it comes to getting started, the first thing that you have to do before you pull out your planner, before you start moving things around your calendar, is to get clear on what matters most to you. Time management starts with heart. Time management starts with those things that make you, that vision for what you want in the future, because it's that life that you want to create for yourself that should be driving your decisions day to day. And that's where we tend to get caught up in is the day to day. How can I just get through today's to-do list? How can I get through tomorrow? Let me just get to the end of this week. And before we know it, the days and the weeks and the months are piling up. And we look back and we ask ourselves, what did I even do? Because you weren't thinking about the bigger picture. For a lot of us, even giving ourselves the permission to dream and to think about the vision that we want for ourselves. In the hustle and bustle of life, there is no time that is just naturally carved out for this. And so you have to stop and you have to think, okay, what is it that I really want in life? What do I want my life to look like a year from now, 10 years from now? I like to think really big and broad to start out with and ask my clients. And if you're listening right now, I encourage you, think about yourself when you're 80 years old. Picture yourself 80 years old, sitting in your rocking chair on your front porch, drinking a sweet tea or a coffee or a margarita, whatever, chatting with a friend, your husband, your children, and telling stories. What stories are you telling? Are you telling stories about the meetings that you went to or the things that you checked off of your to-do list? Or are you telling stories about a life well lived, a life with adventure and activities and friendships and relationships? Because those are the things that don't typically show up on your to-do list day to day. And so when you have that long-term perspective and you think, okay, I want to have a full and fulfilling life. And for me, that would include travel, or that would include family gatherings, or that would include cooking for others, whatever that is. It's going to be different for all of us. I don't really want to have a family gathering where I cook for others. I like to entertain. I don't like to cook. I'll make you a drink, but I'm probably not going to make a casserole. But what does that look like for you? And so when you start to have that big picture vision about what you want your life to look like, you can start to back it up and you can think, okay, if those are the stories that I want to tell when I'm 80 and I'm coming up on the end of a life that has no regrets, what do I need to be doing now? What do I need to do this year? What do I need to do in the next few years in order to make that a reality? Because as much as I love Amazon Prime and instant gratification and getting things quickly, most good things take time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was so powerful. And thank you for that. Because even as you asked the question, 80 on the porch, what are the stories you want to tell? What are the things that you want to remember? I love that. Now, when it comes to productivity, and we were talking about this a little earlier, time management, productivity, oftentimes they're used interchangeably, which we know, which I've learned since listening to your podcast. They're not one and the same. So talk to us a little bit more about one, the differences between time management and productivity and what that looks like, and some key strategies to help actually put things that are manageable within your day or your to-do list or your task list so that you can get through the stuff that are the most important.
Yeah. Oh, very cool question. The difference between time management and productivity, because you're right, they very often are used interchangeably, but they're different. They work well together, but you can't have productivity without time management. So let's break it down. Time management is the act of making intentional decisions about how you will spend your time and allocating your time to different activities. Productivity, on the other hand, is producing. Productivity is cranking things out. It is really just the act of producing things, whether that is producing a blog post or producing a report or producing, reimbursements or whatever it is. It is the act of producing things. And so that's the biggest difference between time management and productivity. Time management is all about how you will use your time, and productivity is about using that time efficiently, using it well in order to produce things. And when it comes to feeling accomplished at the end of the day with your to-do list, there are a few different strategies that you can use here. One thing that really comes to mind is having not one to-do list, but having at least two. One that is a primary list, and the other that is a today list. Your primary list, your master list, your big list, whatever you want to call it. This is almost like your bank of all the things that you need to do, all the things you need to do this week, all the things that are in your head that you know that you need to do at some point. And your today list is made up of just the things that you're planning to do today. So that enables you to do two things. It gives you an opportunity to separate just those high priority things that must be done today or should be done today away from all of the other things. Because when we see all of the other things, our brains look at them and we think, oh, well, I have to do all of these things. And then when you have this huge list, there's not an easy way to visually prioritize which one is most important. You just see this big swamp of to-dos. And so when you have a today list, you're able to just focus on those items that you've chosen to work on today, either because they're deadline oriented or because they're scheduled so that you will meet a future deadline. Or it's something that you've scheduled, like working on your vision, that there is no deadline associated with it. It's something that you need to carve out time to do in order to be your best self. Now, how do we actually do the things on our today list now that we've separated the two out? Well, that's where time blocking comes in. This is when we pull out our planner. This is when we open up our calendar for the day and we look at what's on our list and we look at the obligations or the meetings that are already on our calendar. And we recognize, okay, I have meetings from 9 until 10 and from 10 to 11. But it looks like from 11 until 3, I've got open space. So what am I going to do with that open space between 11 to 3? So you look at your to-do list and you say, okay, I need to edit a podcast episode. I know that's probably going to take me about an hour. So let me go ahead and put an hour block, like a meeting with myself, a meeting called Edit the Podcast on my calendar. And then what else is on the list that needs to be done? And creating these time blocks on your calendar, what they do is they give you a realistic picture of what you can actually accomplish. And the thing is that if you can't make the things on your to-do list fit on your calendar or fit on the pages of your planner, they're definitely not going to fit in your real life. Not to mention, we have the productivity pitfall, the planning fallacy that comes into play. The planning fallacy is one that I really want you to listen up because you're going to love this because it's going to make you feel better. The planning fallacy states that we are terrible at estimating how much time things take. So if you have ever said to yourself, I'm just not good at knowing how long things are going to take me, friend, you are not alone. It is all of us. That's why it's called the planning fallacy, and that's why it has a name. But the cool thing is that when you know that the planning fallacy is a thing, you can combat it by giving yourself just a little more time. And if you think, okay, it's probably going to take me an hour to edit that podcast, let me add 15 more minutes just in case. And so this gives you the opportunity to look at that today list and say, gosh, realistically, I can only do 3 of these things. So then you either have to shuffle your priorities or you put some of those things on the today list back on that other big list. And that way your list is realistic, because that's what gets us down when we write these too long lists that we weren't going to get through all of those things, even if we had put our phone on airplane mode all day and sequestered ourselves in our offices like monks doing a vow of silence. Like, even if we had done those things, we still wouldn't have gotten all 17 of those things on our list done. So cut yourself some slack, be realistic.
Yeah. So many things you said there. I love the idea of the to do versus the today. I feel like I just shifted where literally I would start with my planner at the beginning of the week and list out all of the things that I wanted to get done in the week. After several months, maybe even years, after several periods of not being able to get through things, I started going back into my calendar. And it's amazing the shift that happens, because when you can see it visually, you have meetings or you have calls or you have client work, you only have 2 hours to actually do any admin. Like, my calendar looks crazy, but still having that realistic of what can happen today has really shifted my ability to actually stay on target. Because the other thing that happens too is sometimes there's nothing scheduled. It's just, oh, I don't know what to do. And you go through that long list. And that's when you get overwhelmed, because you're just, oh my gosh, there's so much to do and I only have 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I love the today and the to-do list. And then thank you for giving language to that planning fallacy, because I experience that quite often. We were talking earlier, and something I wanted to share. I had this presentation that I had to do, and I blocked off, just as you said, blocked off 3 hours to do the presentation. It took me 6 hours. And it's just like this, there's this constant reminder that like what we think we can do, always add in extra time so that you're not in this space of overwhelm.
Yeah, I've got to share a strategy that a friend of mine shared with me recently that works well for her. So she's a business owner. She's a wedding planner, high-end wedding planner and designer. So she, for the most part, gets to set her own schedule during the day. She has 3 2-hour time blocks each day. She gives a job to the first 2 time blocks, and the third time block is a buffer block or a miscellaneous block. So block 1, she'll work on, say, the Smith wedding. When that time block ends, she is done. She has to put the Smith wedding away because the next time block is dedicated to the Jones wedding. Okay. But if there are things from the Smith wedding that still need to be tied up, she's got that third miscellaneous, that open block at the end of the day that becomes a catch-all. That's where she ties up the loose ends. That's where she does the small admin work. But I just thought that was so smart, because instead of overscheduling her time, because that's another pitfall that we can run into, is meticulously underestimating what we're capable of. She gives herself that buffer block for what needs to run over. And I just thought that was genius.
Hey there, Sabine here. If you have been listening to this show for any amount of time, you know that I am extremely passionate about helping leaders, professionals, entrepreneurs grow, advance, and make an even bigger impact in the world. And with this passion as my driving force, I have created the Strategic Growth Accelerator. This accelerator is something that I've been using with clients one-on-one, and I've seen clients make amazing progress towards their goals and even crushed their goals and gone beyond what they believed that they were capable of when we first started working together. The Strategic Growth Accelerator is a 90-day program where you and I work together one-on-one to identify and to create a roadmap for you to achieve or exceed one specific goal. The Strategic Growth Accelerator is not just for anybody, and I don't mean that in a mean way. It is for individuals who know exactly what they want to achieve, but are stuck, aren't clear on the first step to take, or maybe they just want the support and the accountability of an experienced coach to come alongside them, to challenge them, and to push them beyond the limits they've created in their own mind. If that is you, I would love to work with you. I only have a limited amount of spots simply because I want to make sure that I am available and have the capacity to support you in any way that you need during the 90 days of us working together. Learn more about the accelerator and about the process at SabineGideon.com/accelerator. Again, that's SabineGideon.com/accelerator. I am so excited to really help you make 2022 your best year yet. If you have goals that have been sitting on the shelf or sitting in your mind or sitting on your whiteboard that you know you want to complete and or want to achieve this year, this is the program for you. Head over to SabineGideon.com/accelerator and sign up for a consultation for me to learn more about your goal and for us to decide if it makes sense for us to work together. So again, SabineGideon.com/accelerator. I cannot wait to work with you this year. See you inside the accelerator. And so going back, I shared a little bit more about your professional journey, but just to share with the audience here, you live this out in real life, managing your time and trying to be productive as possible. I know from listening to your podcast, like you work a full-time job, you have your business, you have support, but you're also doing this podcast. Like you are doing all of the things and you have small kids, you just moved. So it's a lot of stuff. And yet you're able to manage it all. And so for those of you who are listening, who are probably thinking, oh, well, they're entrepreneurs and they have time and they can do things, right? No, in real life, there are things happening outside of that. So talk to us a little bit more about how you manage all of these responsibilities, all of these roles that you have in your life, and how do you incorporate the tools and the strategies that you share with your clients to be able to be successful in your own real life?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So yeah, I do have a lot going on, but I will say that I do not do quote unquote everything. So here's what I mean. And I guess to give you a little bit of a peek, I work full-time. I have a full-time job. I am the head of community at an amazing tech startup called Clockwise. Clockwise is a smart calendar assistant that helps people spend time on what matters most by creating blocks of focus time in their day. It is a phenomenal product, an amazing company. And I am so fortunate to have been found, I guess you could say, by this company because our missions align so well. And so that makes work not feel like work. I am a part of a remote team. So that means that I work from home and I basically get to choose my own hours to a degree. And so that gives me the flexibility to have set time during the day to work on my time management coaching business. So as a time management coach, I work with clients one-on-one doing time management coaching sessions. There's also the podcast that releases new episodes every single week, both interviews and solo shows. And then I also lead the It's About Time Academy, which is new membership program that walks people through the different milestones within my heart method of time management coaching. So within my business, there's the podcast, there's one-on-one coaching, there's academy. And then I also do speaking and workshops for organizations, both in person and virtually. So there's the business side, there's the full-time role that I have with Clockwise. I'm also a mom to a 3-year-old and an almost 18-month-old. So I have little kids in a very, like you could say, like demanding time. They are not at the age where they can do things by themselves. I mean, my 3-year-old, it's so funny. Anytime I get frustrated or impatient, I remember that she is literally learning how to not put her underwear on backwards right now. That's where she is. She's little and it's so fun, but it is a lot. And so because of these different roles and responsibilities, plus I'm a volunteer with the Junior League of Greater Covington, which is a volunteer and training organization in my area. I'm a wife. I have friends. I do life outside of work. But because there are so many different, you could say, balls in the air, if we're using the juggling metaphor, I love all of them. And that's something that makes doing all of it easier, is that I love all of it. but I don't do it alone. I am very fortunate in my full-time role with Clockwise to have a number of contractors that help execute on the tactics, whereas I get to set the strategy. They get to execute on the tactics. And so we work together really well as a team. In my business, I am very fortunate to have my husband on my team. He recently stepped into a role that we have called head of operations in January, completely new to the online business and coaching space. He had been editing my podcast for a few months just because he wanted to try it out. He's helping me day in and day out. And not only are we partners in business, but we are partners in life and in our family in the truest sense of the word. So because I have a full-time job and I am leading our coaching business, which we now call our business, our family business, we have his schedule arranged so that he starts dinner every day at around 3:00 before he goes to pick the girls up from school. That's something that he loves doing. I mean, he also loves cooking a whole lot more than I do, but that is a way that we work together. He preps dinner. We work together to have you can call it a chore chart, but it's just the very clear communication that we have in our marriage and in the business that enables everything to work well. In addition to Scott, I also have an amazing marketing assistant who helps with content creation and who can handle those things that I don't necessarily have to have my hands in. And we outsource things like tax preparation, like so many people do. And gosh, a number of other things. And so many people have said to me before, I don't know how you delegate. I'm way too type A to let other people do my work for me. And they say that as if it's a badge of honor for them, that they're proud of the fact that they are overwhelmed and stressed because they are shouldering this load. And I say, I am too type A to not get help. I am too type A to not delegate, because when I find ways to delegate to others or create a system or a process or even an automation, we use so many automations to run the podcast smoothly. That enables me to spend my time, my limited time, which is sometimes 2 hours a day or less, on the things that I can really impact in my business. And because I know that I am the best person who is going to write my podcast episodes, I am the only person who can give those podcast interviews and record podcast episodes. There are really only a few things that only I can do, and I'm going to do those things really well. And if there is something else that can be delegated, I am doing myself, my business, and my clients a disservice for not showing up as wholly and just as much as possible in those areas that are my genius zone. So I have help. I am not afraid to ask for help. Any opportunity to outsource and invest, but I would say like invest in a smart way. There's a difference between investing and spending money. And sometimes we can get caught up in spending money in our business and we think, oh, well, it's an investment. I'm investing in my business. No, you're spending money. What's the return for that investment that you're making? And for me, my investment in a marketing assistant, that gives me more time to focus on the work that I do best. And it gives me time to spend with my family.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up that point that in order to do it all, right, especially for us who are type A and we want to save the world and make it a better place, that's a lot of work. And in no way, shape, or form should we expect that we're the ones to be able to do all that work. So definitely reaching out and supporting. And I just wanted to comment, as you were talking about automation, I was super impressed. I sent you an email and immediately got like what would have been like an out of office. And it was so detailed around, if you're writing me for this is when you can expect to hear back. If you're writing me for this, these are the next steps. And it just made it so clear for anyone, regardless what they were reaching out to you. Okay, these are the next steps. I'm going to hear back from her in this time. But then also I think back to the whole conversation around setting boundaries, right? Sometimes a lot of setting boundaries is setting expectations. And so none of your clients are expecting a 5-minute response because you already told them like, hey, I'll get back to you in 24 to 48 hours. Just these little systems, putting those in place to just help not only with you and getting your time and being able to manage your time, but others also can manage their time once they are clear on what your boundaries are, what the expectations are. So thank you for
Definitely.
sharing that.
Yeah. That email autoresponder has truly been a game changer. And that was inspired by something that I saw many other female business owners that I look up to implement, because they are running their business. They are spending time with their families. And because they are crystal clear on what to expect, I respect that they're not in their inbox all the time. One of the things that I have to tell my time management clients very often, especially those who have been conditioned to respond to email immediately, almost as if it's an instant messenger, is that you were hired to be the chief development officer of this organization. You were hired to lead this strategy. You were not hired to answer email. Yes, you have to answer email, but that is not what you were hired to do. Let's make this time to do what you were hired to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a great reminder. I find myself reminding myself all the time when I get into my website and I'm playing around like Sabine, this is not the role of a CEO. Like you need to get out of here, figure out what you want, and then assign it to someone else.
Yes.
So that's a really great point. Thank you for that. I just wanted to ask you a few rapid fire questions. Obviously, as a woman in leadership, both in your business, in your home, and of course, in the organization, I'm curious as you think about your own leadership style and your leadership philosophy over the years that you've developed, how would you or how do you define that style and or your philosophy?
Oh, goodness. So I believe that leadership is incredibly personal to you and your personality. We are all so different and unique. And the skills and the strengths that we have are special. They should be honored. And just because someone else shows up as a leader, even if they are a very effective leader in one way, does not mean that you should attempt to be a copy and pasted version of that person. So get to know yourself, get to know your strengths, and really play up to those strengths and own them in your own leadership style.
I love that. I love that. And I share the philosophy all the time. I believe that we're all leaders, right,
Mhm.
in different capacities, and it's not it's not an external thing. It
Right.
comes from who you are essentially, and so you operating as you, or you just being you, and essentially is you being a leader. As we kind of shift gears here around networking, so I am a firm believer that to grow in any capacity, whether you're in corporate America or you have your own business, that building relationships and building a strong network of individuals is super, super important and will help you fast track. As you think
Mhm.
about just overall in your journey and in your career, what's one networking strategy that you feel has really aided in you being successful? You being able to succeed in either professional world or business world.
Yeah, it's find the connectors. Find the connectors. In every group, there will always be a few individuals that just seem to know everyone. They're the social butterflies. They know everything about everybody, and not in a gossipy way, just in a interested in humans kind of way. And so, anytime I am in a new situation or an unfamiliar environment, maybe if I'm at a conference or some just new organization or situation, I always look for the connectors, because the connectors will be the ones to bring you in, to introduce you to others, and to help almost matchmake and help you make those connections. And so I have over the years fostered really amazing friendships with different connectors that has served to grow my network, but not in a self-serving way, in a wow, look at all of these amazing people that I know and have friendships now as a result of finding the connector.
Yeah, love that. So you shared with us your journey and starting with politics and then moving into crisis management and getting to that place of burnout where you just had to take that step back and realign with who you really are. And now you're doing work that you really love. If you could take if you could take a time machine, or if you could step into a time machine and go back to your younger self, the one who was starting her career, what advice would you share with her based on what you've experienced and what you now know?
Gosh, I certainly believe that everything happens for a reason, and that the experiences, good and bad, that I had along the way that led me through crisis management, that led me to even to the place of burnout and on the other side of it, all of those things needed to happen in order to be who I am now and to serve in the way that I serve and have the perspective that I do. And so I think if I were to go back in time and tell 22-year-old me, give advice, I would say, hey, there are times that are going to be really hard, but along the way, you are going to become deeply rooted in who you are and what you believe in as a result of the experiences that you have. And even though in the moment it sucks and it feels like you'll never get on the other side of it, there is another side and you will get there. So just keep going.
Oh, I felt that.
I felt it too.
Yeah. And so next question, last two questions for you in terms of reading, because I believe leaders are readers. What book have you read or would you recommend for any woman in leadership?
Yeah. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan is always my first and top recommendation. It's really fair to say that this book changed my life because it really opened my eyes to the concept of just having ownership of your time and your life, realizing that nobody else is going to come in and give me permission. No one else is going to knock on my door and dub me an expert in anything or tell me that I should do this or try this or give me permission to be a coach. And not only did it really instill that concept of ownership, it places such an importance on how you spend your time and how prioritizing your time is what adds up little by little to creating the life that you want and living your vision and living your purpose. Really identifying, okay, what is that one thing? What is that one thing that I need to do today? The one thing that I want to do in my life, the one thing that I need to do this week, because it really turns up the dial on priorities and it makes decisions so much easier when you have that guiding light and that North Star of that purpose that you're living for.
Absolutely. I love that book. I absolutely love that book. I was actually just looking at it this morning, like I should probably reread this.
I reread it once every few years. I have it on Audible as well. So sometimes I just give it a re-listen when I feel like I need to just recalibrate and tighten things up.
When you think about your legacy, obviously this whole transformation for you or this journey has included the opportunity to really take a step back and get grounded and get clear your vision, your mission, and your purpose to an extent. So when you think about when you're 80 and you're sitting on that porch and having your beverage of choice, or I guess in terms of legacy, you'd probably not be sitting on the porch. But right. When you think about just your life in general, and when you're not here, like, what is it that you want the people who are closest to you or the people who are impacted by you? What do you want them to remember?
Yeah, I want them to remember. I don't care if they remember my name or the name of my podcast or any of the individual stories that I tell. But if my legacy is instilling in a generation of women, of people, that they can be in control of their time and that they can live a life of no regrets. And that hopefully through my work, through what I share and what I teach, that they feel not only inspired and encouraged, but that there's a generation of women, of people who feel equipped, who feel like they have the tools and the strategies to actually live a life that they love with no regrets.
Every time you say it's the life with no regrets. My goodness, like that. I feel like that is such a beautiful gift to give to ourselves and those around us and that we're assigned to impact. So thank you for that. As we wrap up here, I definitely want you to share more about the podcast. Let the listeners know, how can they get in touch with you? How can they reach out? How can they learn more?
Yes. Well, I would be so thrilled if you would tune in to It's About Time, my podcast, sharing stories and strategies to inspire better work, life, and balance, with new episodes dropping every Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you really want to connect, come find me on Instagram, because that's where I'm hanging out. Send me a DM, send me a question. I would love to create a podcast episode for you if you've got a certain time management struggle, but I would absolutely love to connect and stay in touch.
With that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and giving us these strategies, but more importantly, just showing us real life how to really implement a lot of these productivity and time management strategies that we hear about or that we've learned about, and what that looks like in action. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. If you found today's episode helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your business or organization, I would love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon, that's my handle, and send me a private message, or feel free to go ahead and leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network who you think might benefit from this content. Lastly, be sure to check the show notes and the description below for links to resources, including relevant downloads, articles, and any upcoming training. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.